Breaking down the Vikings from the perspective of a former NFL General Manager of the Year. It's Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, presented by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers.
Welcome to Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, brought to you every Monday and Thursday during the Viking season by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers and the 2024 GMC Sierra on 1500 ESPN, available 24/7 on YouTube via links from the 1500 ESPN and Score North websites. I'm Jeff Diamond, former Vikings GM, former Tennessee Titans president. Our producer is Sam Bird. Does a great job even after lousy games of getting our show together, getting our highlights and interviews. And Sam, that was a rough one last night for the Purple Gang, but bottom line, it's on to the playoffs, and they have to flush that Lions game very quickly, but certainly costly in a lot of ways in terms of losing the division title, losing the number one seed, the week off, home field advantage and all that. But if they beat the Rams, I think all will be okay,
right,
and may well get a return trip to Detroit. That's a distinct possibility if they win this week in L.A. on Monday night, and Philadelphia as the number 2 seed beats Green Bay, which I think is likely, even though the Packers could pull the upset as they did against Dallas last year. But now Christian Watson is out with an ACL. That doesn't help their cause. And if Tampa Bay, who's pretty hot with Baker Mayfield, they didn't play great against New Orleans, but found a way to win, and they won the NFC South. They claimed the number 3 seed, and if they beat Washington on Sunday night, then that sets up the Vikings as the 5 if they beat the Rams to go to number 1, Detroit, for another rematch against the Lions. And I think in a lot of ways, there were certainly opportunities in the Sunday night game for the Vikings to have turned the tide. And I'm talking, of course, with that 0 for 4 in the red zone.
Yep. And you're absolutely right, Jeff. I mean, the failed red zone attempts, the missed field goals, I know we're going to talk about it later, the non-intentional grounding call that wasn't called. There's just so many different things that didn't break the Vikings' way. And we talked about this on Thursday, that in order to beat the Lions, you have to keep pace with them. You have to obviously outscore them. And the Vikings just weren't able to keep pace with Detroit at all once they got going.
Yeah, and I think that was the unfortunate thing, is because the defense played so well in the first half and even into the early second half, into the third quarter. They stopped the Lions on 5 of their first 7 drives, including a 4th down stop and an interception by Ivan Pace that set the Vikings up at the 7-yard line, and they couldn't get in the end zone. And just so many opportunities that they had, as we said, in the red zone to score points that could have turned that game around. And I think what really stood out to me was just kind of a sequence of events that happened in that kind of second quarter when the Vikings had a chance to make a move. They were stopped on 4th down. Darnold overthrows Jefferson wide open in the end zone.
Right.
Then the Vikings have that particular play where they have a near sack of Goff. Should have been intentional grounding called. NBC's Terry McCauley, former NFL referee, said it should have been an intentional grounding. That's a huge play. It's a 2-point play right there. Vikings get the ball. Now, they got the ball back on an interception by Pace, which ended up in a field goal because they couldn't score again. But even still, the 2 points would have been big. They could have maybe turned it into 9 points. If they had the 7 points before that on the Darnold overthrow to Jefferson, you're talking 16 points in about a 3 or 4 minute span in the second quarter, where the Vikings could have taken a 9-point lead. Instead, they're still down 7-3 and go into half. And then the worst part of it all was they drive down, they get a field goal by Riker, a 51-yard field goal, and then he duck hooks it out of bounds. That was a horrible play, and he's been so good all year. I don't know what he was doing, what he was thinking, but that set up the Lions at the 40-yard line. All they needed was a couple completions, and then Jake Bates kicks a 48-yarder, so all of a sudden the 1-point lead turns into 4 points going into the second half, and then the Vikings drive down first drive of the second half, get in position, can't score, have to kick field goal again. As we said, so many things that happened. I also think about Andrew Van Ginkel and the play where he had an opportunity to make the pick six. Now, that was a tough play. He had to kind of reach out with his left hand, but it was a similar play to what he had made against Aaron Rodgers in London, made against Daniel Jones of the Giants. If he makes that play, at that point, the Vikings are down 17-9, and it's I believe it was the second play of the fourth quarter.
Correct.
All of a sudden, if he takes that back to the house, you're talking a totally different game. So, yeah, it ends up being a 3-score loss, and everybody, they got clobbered. Well, not necessarily, and there were plenty of opportunities. And as we said, if Sam Darnold had played like the Sam Darnold of the previous 7 weeks, when he had 18 touchdown passes, 2 interceptions, 6 of his 7 games were 100-plus passer ratings, that wasn't the Sam Darnold we saw in Detroit. He was rattled, obviously, by the blitz, and the Lions came hard after him. 56% of the time they blitzed, and they put a pressure rate of 48.9% on him. Offensive line didn't play great. The running game was okay, and maybe they should have leaned on the running game more.
Right.
Because they had 120 yards rushing in the game.
Although Cam did get half of that in one play.
Yeah, he did. He did indeed. Indeed.
I think my takeaway, Jeff, and you'll agree with this, is that, the Vikings, yes, they had a bad game, but it's in a way it's better to have the bad game now than obviously next week or going forward. And let's not forget, Detroit had a couple of bad games, even though they won those games. I mean, Jared Goff had one where he threw for, I think, 5 interceptions.
Right. Still won the game, right?
And they still won the game. The Vikings obviously lost this one. But the point of that is that, these good teams find ways to bounce back. And I think the Vikings are going to be okay. And they are by far the best 5 seed probably ever. And really need to have that mindset going into Los Angeles next week.
Yeah, they do. And it's a rematch of the Week 8 game where they lost 30-20 on a short week on a Thursday night after the Lions game here. And we know in that game the Vikings had the ball late in the game. Darnold gets sacked, but it's an obvious face mask, doesn't get called.
Yep.
Could have changed what could have happened on that final drive, obviously, because it was a safety on the sack. And Vikings end up losing by 10. But they're certainly can match up with the Rams. We know that. And I think they probably have learned from that last game. Kieran Williams had a good game running the ball. Vikings have been pretty good all year against the run. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp came back that week, and they were dynamite in that game, especially Nacua. And a lot of quick screens that they threw, and I think the Vikings will be ready for those type of plays. And yeah, it's going to be a tough game. I think it's a very even matchup. The Vikings are a 1.5-point early favorite in LA, but hey, that one could go either way. And I think if the Vikings can get at least one postseason win, and then whatever happens after that, if they have to go to Philly or they have to go to Detroit, whatever the case may be, we know it's going to be tough, that divisional playoff round, but just get out of the wild card round.
That's right.
Don't make it like 2 years ago against the Giants. But let's go back and look at some of the highlights of the Vikings at the Lions on NBC, national TV, prime time. Mike Tirico and Chris Collinsworth were on the call. First quarter, Vikings, as I said, defense playing pretty well. And they were holding the Pro Bowler Gibbs. He's a great running back, but They were holding him early. He only had 1 yard on his first 6 carries, a couple tackles for loss. Vikings, as we said, had some early opportunities. But here's the first touchdown of the game by Jahmyr Gibbs on a 25-yard run.
25. Gibbs got an opening. The acceleration. Jahmyr Gibbs. Touchdown, Detroit.
Kind of deked Cam Bynum there, and yeah, he's tough to stop in the open field. We know that, and then of course as the first half went on, it was very close, back and forth. Vikings having opportunities, getting stopped on fourth down in the red zone. So many opportunities, so disappointing that they couldn't connect on some of those plays, and then the Vikings, as we said, after the intentional grounding non-call, which again, of course, they call Sam Darnold for intentional grounding later in the game. But after that play, only a couple plays later, here's an interception that Goff threw, deflected by Josh Metellus, intercepted by Ivan Pace.
26. Lions out of the shadow of the goalpost. Again retreating. Oh, it's intercepted on the deflection by Pace. 3 in his way. He thought he was lofting it to Gibbs, who had a lot of room to run. But Josh Metellus tipped it, and Ivan Pace Jr. comes up with the interception.
Unfortunately, he kind of stumbled. I think he probably would have scored on that play. He only had to beat the quarterback.
Yep.
So that was disappointing that he couldn't get that in the end zone because, as it turned out, of course, the Vikings couldn't score on that. They ended up kicking a field goal on that play because they'd been stopped the previous series. And as we said, I think that I'm going to go back to the non-intentional grounding call and kind of make a point about the officiating in this game. And obviously, it doesn't do any good to blame the officials. It's not going to bring them back. It's not going to change the outcome. But I didn't think the Vikings got breaks from the officials. And there were a lot of non-calls on holding, on pass interference against Jefferson, against Hawkinson, a couple really blatant ones, especially one in the end zone where Jefferson was held and couldn't get to the ball on a fourth down play. And then Hawkinson on a big third down play later in the game where Anzalone, who came back after his injury, made a big impact for the Lions, but he obviously interfered with Hawkinson on that play. And then that forced the Vikings to try the field goal that Reichard missed from 51 yards. And at that point, it's 17-9. Reichard makes that kick 17-12. It's getting a little closer. Lions could be getting a little more nervous, but the 8-point lead they held on to. So, as we said, things that happened in this game, and Vikings had another fourth down stop in second quarter. Jonathan Bullard deflected a pass, but again, only got a field goal out of it. So, out of those, the interception, the fourth down stops, they only got 2 field goals out of 4 relative turnovers in the game, whether it was the 2 fourth down stops or whether it was the 2 interceptions. And going into the third quarter, Vikings opening drive, moving the ball down the field, and here they go, 4th and goal from the 2-yard line, incomplete pass to Jordan Addison, who was kind of missing in action in this game. Unfortunately for the Vikings, only had 1 catch for 0 yards after he was dynamite the previous 4 games. They got to get him back on track this week.
Darnold looking, trying to scramble and keep it alive, throwing, incomplete. They've stopped them again.
And you got to give the Lions some credit, too. They played some pretty good coverage, a lot better coverage than what we expected out of them after they were basically torched by the 49ers, who didn't have Brandon Ayuk, didn't have Christian McCaffrey, and they scored 34 points, ran up 475 yards against them. And the Lions were playing all their regulars in that Monday night game. And then you go back a couple weeks earlier, they give up 48 to Josh Allen and the Bills. That's what really surprised me, that the Vikings only ended up scoring 9 points in this game against a Detroit defense that I felt was very susceptible coming in with all the injuries that they've had this season. Now, maybe that will all pan out, and maybe they'll get another shot at them in the divisional round. Maybe it'll be in the conference championship. They should only hope it's in the conference championship. And who knows, the Vikings could end up winning that game and making these plays that they didn't make. But that was a big one. Next drive, Harrison Smith immediately intercepts Jared Goff. Vikings get the ball back.
And thus, they trail. Goff in his own end zone. Deep shot downfield. His coverage down there is intercepted by Harrison Smith.
Kind of a very uncharacteristic throw by Jared Goff, and who has one of the best efficiency rates in the league. But as you said, he's had games when he's throwing picks, and he threw a couple in this game. So, but as we said, the Vikings only end up, after that interception, can't convert again. And as the game went on, the Van Ginkel play, as I said, was a very big play in the game. If he makes that play, and then the Lions end up scoring a touchdown in that game with about 10 minutes to go up 15 points, kind of sealed the deal more or less at that point. Then they went on a long drive after that, after they sacked Darnold on a play. End up with this touchdown by Jahmyr Gibbs, which is his third of the game on a 13-yard run.
Don't feel like I'm limited to only so much. Give me more.
From the 13, Gibbs left. Jahmyr Gibbs accelerates into the end zone. He's got the hat trick.
I'll tell you, Barry Sanders was in the house, and those are the kind of moves I saw Barry Sanders make for so many years with the Lions when I was with the Vikings. And not that Jahmyr Gibbs is Barry Sanders necessarily, but he is a very good back, Pro Bowl his first 2 seasons. And if they see him again, they're going to have to find a way to stop these big plays that he made. But again, he ends up with 139 yards rushing in the game, but 69 of those yards were on the final drive when basically the deal was done. So we will see. Good news for the Vikings. They come out of this game healthy, according to Kevin O'Connell today. Might get Pat Jones back next week for the Rams game. No new injuries per se. And so other than Christian Darrisaw, they're a pretty healthy team going into postseason compared to where the Lions are. And they lost Terry and Arnold last night, too. We'll see how bad that injury is for them. But before we hear from Kevin O'Connell and Sam Darnold and Justin Jefferson, Josh Metellus, let's talk about our great sponsor, the Select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers. There are trucks. Then there's the truck, GMC Sierra, with available features like the V8 engine, the ultimate luxury interior, and of course, the available world's first 6-function multi-pro tailgate. GMC Sierra, not just any truck, the truck. GMC's continued commitment to professional-grade engineering is on full display at your Select Minnesota GMC dealers. Stop by and choose from our wide selection of colors, models, and trim levels. Our friendly sales professionals are ready to work with you so you drive home happy with not just any deal, the deal. So come take a test drive today. We are professional-grade GMC. Well-qualified buyers get 0% APR on 2024 GMC Sierra light-duty models. See your Select Minnesota GMC dealers today. Length of contract limited. Some customers will not qualify. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 2/3/25. Kevin O'Connell, postgame, not happy, disappointed with the effort.
Obviously a disappointing effort, but you have to compliment those guys on the other side for playing a really good football game, and we didn't do a lot of the things that we've consistently done all season long, and this game came down to finishing in the red zone, weighty downs, third downs, pitching and catching, and I thought our defense battled, asked a little bit too much of them, and that's going to happen against a good team. But we've done a lot of really, really good things. This has been a phenomenal football year for our team, and that locker room is already ready to go. Guys are ready to respond, and we'll get ready to go for a huge opportunity coming up on Monday night, going on the road.
Sam Darnold, talking about him, one of the things that was just very out of character for how he's played this year, he came into the game with a league best 139.6 passer rating when blitzed. But that didn't stop Aaron Glenn, the Lions defensive coordinator, from going after him hard, and partially because of their injuries on the defensive line. And so they blitzed him, as we said, 56% of the time, highest percentage Darnold's faced this year. Obviously didn't handle it well, far too many overthrows. And I think that got to question his decision-making, not finding Addison, Hockenson, Jefferson on several occasions. I do think the Vikings could have run it a little bit more. And the run defense, I think, was still pretty good until it was out of reach. If the two teams meet again, which is, I think it's a distinct possibility, as we said. I think the Vikings, they can feel good about doing a decent job on Goff. 2 interceptions, 2 sacks, 10 quarterback hits on him. Should have had a safety. So there are a lot of good things that happened defensively. They won the turnover battle, but lost. Essentially, the turnover battle ended up even because the Lions had the 3 fourth-down stops. The Vikings had 1 fourth-down stop. So the game, I think, was closer than a lot of people think. It was a 1-point game late in the third quarter, and I know a lot of people are saying today, oh, they got blown out by Detroit. Well, not really, not so much. And, yeah, at the end, and the Vikings' 9-game winning streak is stopped, but I think they just have to flush this game quickly, move on to the Rams game, think about how they're going to approach that game against a team that they did lose to. They've only lost to 2 teams all year, Detroit and the Rams, and here they got them again back-to-back. So we'll see. But the Rams, they can be had. Were on a pretty good heater with 5 straight wins going into yesterday's game against Seattle, where they rested their starters, didn't play Stafford, didn't play their big receivers. So they'll have some extra rest. But the Vikings, I think it's beneficial that they have an extra day with the Monday night game. That'll help them, especially with having to travel out west. The Rams are a team, they're 15th in offense, 26th in total defense. They got a young defense. Wow. Maybe they can be had there. We'll see how that plays out. But Sam Darnold postgame, again, talking about learning from his mistakes.
Yeah, obviously disappointing game. Felt like we just, for me personally, didn't hit the throws that I should hit in the red zone, especially early on. Just didn't execute the way that we wanted to. Felt our defense played really well. They kept us in the game for most of the game, and just going down in the red zone and kicking field goals, that's not going to cut it against a good team like that. So just got to be a lot better. For myself personally, got to hit the throws in tight coverage, and we're looking forward to the challenge against LA moving forward. But got to watch this tape and learn from it and get better.
And I think, as obviously Sam later said, they're just going to try to go 1-0 this week.
Yep.
Get back to that mindset and focus on the Rams. And I thought it was really kind of humorous in the post-game handshake, Sam, with Kevin O'Connell and Dan Campbell.
You heard it too.
And if you heard Campbell say, "I'll see you in 2 weeks,"
right?
I think he's planning on the Vikings being back in Detroit, and O'Connell kind of gave him a little smile, like, "Yeah, I think that's a very good possibility, but one at a time."
Well, I think for me, the biggest takeaway regarding Darnold's performance is, we all have to slow down and take a breath and remember the most wins he's ever had in a season as a starting quarterback is 7. They put that graphic on the screen last night, and this was like a playoff game. Obviously, it was not a playoff game, but Darnold has no playoff experience. There's just so many different things. Jared Goff has played in a Super Bowl. I think we forget that about Jared Goff. And he has so much more playoff experience that Darnold just doesn't have. So this was a good learning opportunity, and I think it'll help him be ready for Los Angeles.
Yeah, and you look at the Rams, and who are they playing? A guy who's won a Super Bowl,
right?
In Matthew Stafford. So, yeah, that's a little bit of a concern going in. But, I think Sam, to me, and I have a hunch that what Kevin O'Connell and Josh McCown, the quarterback coach, are going to do, they're going to sit Sam down and say, "Hey, look, remember what happened in Jacksonville? 3 interceptions that game, played terrible. Vikings won it because the defense played great."
Right.
But after that game, kind of thought about his footwork, thought about his playmaking. And since over the next 7 games after Jacksonville, he has 18 touchdown passes, 2 interceptions. Vikings win all those games. They were on a 9-game winning streak heading into Detroit. They just can't forget that they won 14 games this year,
right.
as you said. And have to go in with confidence against the Rams, even though they lost that game against the Rams. But I think there are extenuating circumstances from the fact you're on a short week. You have to travel. You just played Detroit in a big game when you're undefeated. And
you lose your left tackle in the middle of the game.
That's right. You lose your left tackle middle of the game. Exactly right.
Yep.
So there are a lot of things that happen in that game. And so I think that they will regroup this week and go out to LA, and I think play much better overall than they played against Detroit on Sunday night. Now, whether that's good enough, the Rams are a good team, and we'll see. Justin Jefferson just talking about not executing.
Just didn't execute. That's the moral of the story. There's not really an excuse for it. There's not really, something that's really behind it. We just got to come in and execute and just do the things that we've been doing for the rest of the whole season. So, it's just a learning point. It's just something that we have to look at and figure out. And, we have a big opportunity next week in LA. So, not really going to hang our heads too much on this. They're a great team. They're definitely a team that's we probably will see later on in the playoffs. So can't really beat ourselves down about it. Got to look at it, fix it up, and come back ready next week.
Josh Metellus talking defensively, and even though it was a pretty good performance defensively overall for the first 3 quarters, but didn't finish the way he wanted to finish.
Just in terms of you can't do your job 3 plays out of 5, in games like this, we need 5 out of 5 from everybody. We need everybody to be as perfect as possible, as detailed as possible. We just got to find a way to be better. This was I'm happy it happened to us. It's still regular season, obviously. So we get a chance to take this taste out of our mouth and use it to move forward.
Let's hear again from our great sponsor, the Select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers.
There are trucks, then there's the truck. GMC Sierra. Not just any truck, the truck. Well-qualified buyers get 0% APR for 36 months on GMC Sierra light-duty models. See your local GMC dealer today. Monthly payment is $28.16 for every $1,000 you finance. Average example down payment 15%. Some customers will not qualify. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 3/3/25.
In the games over the weekend, really the games of consequence, shall we say, were the Ravens winning the AFC North with their win over the Browns on Saturday, and the Buccaneers, as we said, won the NFC South with their win over the Saints on Sunday. Had to rally from a 10-point deficit to win that game and gain the 3rd seed over the Rams. I guess going into the weekend, the hope would have been, if the Vikings didn't beat the Lions, that they wound up having to go to Atlanta in the wild card round. But that didn't happen. First of all, the Falcons got beat by the Panthers, but by then they knew that Tampa Bay had already won. I don't know that there's that much difference in going to L.A. versus going to Tampa. Both those teams have been playing really well down the stretch. I guess you might say Stafford has a little more playoff experience than Baker Mayfield, but Baker's having a great year too. So I think the one thing, you play in L.A., it's not a real rabid home crowd either.
Right.
And I think there'll be a lot of Viking fans that showed up there. We're on that Thursday night. And so I think that maybe will be a benefit to playing in L.A. versus Tampa Bay, and especially compared to Detroit. That crowd was very, very boisterous, shall we say, in the Sunday night game, and it'll be the same in the playoffs, certainly. But those are some of the games of consequence over the weekend. And the Broncos got the last wild card spot because the Chiefs decided not to show up,
right?
And lost 38-0 because
Something
Mahomes
like that.
sat and Carson Wentz was awful, and Chiefs just didn't care about that game, but they still finished with the number 1 seed, so it really doesn't matter for them. And as they enter the playoffs, trying to become the first 3-peat Super Bowl winner. So we go into Wild Card Weekend. It's going to be exciting. I think there's some really interesting matchups starting on Saturday. The Chargers go into Houston, and the Texans are kind of reeling. And we're going to make our picks on Thursday on our show. But the other game on Saturday, Pittsburgh's at Baltimore. You got to like the Ravens and Lamar Jackson. Denver at Buffalo on Sunday. I don't give the Broncos much chance. Green Bay at Philly. I think the Eagles should be able to win at home. And then Washington, Tampa Bay, I think that's a pretty even matchup in the Sunday night game. I think that'll be an exciting game. Jaden Daniels' first playoff game. And then the Vikings and the Rams will wrap up Wild Card Weekend on Monday night, as we said. Beneficial to the Vikings to get that one extra day of rest. I think that's important for them heading into postseason. And as they kind of flush this Lions game, a disappointing outing, as we know, but closer than a lot of people think. And the Vikings would like nothing more than to get another crack at the Lions in the divisional playoff round, or who knows, maybe in the conference championship. We'll see. But,
well, Jeff, I'm going to throw one scenario at you. If all the road teams win next weekend, meaning the Vikings, the Commanders, and the Packers, then the Vikings would actually host a divisional round game against the Commanders. So there is one scenario where the Vikings could end up with a home game. So believe it or not, we want the Packers to win next week.
Yes, we do. Absolutely. That would be a great scenario to get Washington here in a divisional playoff.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, you're one game from the conference championship.
That's right.
And
I might have to dump my comment for saying we wanted the Packers to win. I might have to.
Yeah. And then hope the Packers beat the Lions, and then all of a sudden you're hosting the conference championship game. Hey, stranger things have happened.
That's right.
We know. Just look at the college playoffs and all the top 4 seeds lost. So we will see, and we will be back on Thursday. We're going to preview the Vikings and the Rams, the big playoff game, wild card round, and wild card weekend games. This has been Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, brought to you every Monday and Thursday during the Viking season by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers and the 2024 GMC Sierra on 1500 ESPN, available 24/7 on YouTube via links from the 1500 ESPN and Score North websites. I'm Jeff Diamond, former Vikings GM, former Tennessee Titans president, with Sam Bird, and we will talk to you on Thursday.